I'm bouncing from one podcast to the next. So I was just on one,
Oh,
just
really?
finished up.
Man,
Yeah.
are you a superstar? Are you like a Hollywood type?
No, I don't know
Yep.
about Hollywood, but I try my best to do a few things.
Got it. Well, very nice to have you with us today.
Thank you for having us.
So, hey guys, again, very informal chat. I might be taking a nap halfway through. Who knows? It kind of depends on Bob and Andrea if they have interesting questions. I kind of perk up. Otherwise, it's your show, right? No,
Well,
we're here
falling
to
asleep is not a uncommon response to Peter and I's talks. So,
Exactly. It always.
having heard a part of your story, Rich, when we first spoke last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago already. I sincerely doubt that. So that
So
being
that
said, introduce yourself, guys. We're here for you.
Peter, go first, please.
Sure. So, hi, everybody. My name is Peter Evans. I lead the strategy practice at a company called McFadden Digital. We specialize in advising companies on their marketplace strategy, as well as do technology implementations and any customization that's necessary in building those marketplaces. I've been in the platform space for a long time. Love it. And it's just a great and interesting space to be in. So, look forward to the conversation today.
Yep. And hello, I'm Rich Bulger. I'm a kid from Missouri, barely graduated high school, drove trucks in the military. I had a 17-year career at Verizon, where I started as a temp from Adecco and moved through customer service, sales, management, ran the largest retail district in the company. So half of my life I spent on commission sales. In 2009, I became the youngest director in Verizon over operations and marketing. And I started Verizon's retail trade-in program, which pulled me into supply chain. I learned about reverse logistics and what it was, and we'll talk a lot about that today. I ran a facility that pushed 15 million devices through every year, $300 million a year budget. I ran a global sales team that took things that people no longer wanted, grew up from a billion to 1.6 billion. Before I retired from Verizon, went to work for Cisco running their global reverse logistics. We won 3 Gartner Supply Chain Awards. I served 3 years in the advisory board of the Reverse Logistics Association. I got a master's degree from the only college on the planet that I found that had a course on reverse logistics. And recently, I've been the CEO of a small company, helped them grow from 27 million to 43 to 67 to 90 to 116 million, called Recirc, short for Recirculate. Global vision, sustainable mission to reuse first, recycle last, never waste, matching used supply with used demand. And I wrote a book called Going Circular, the evolution of reverse logistics into a competitive weapon. So as I exited Recirc and I'm on to the next thing, there's times in my life I've been an entrepreneur working, building programs within big companies. I've been an entrepreneur running my own business and growing it. And now I'm an infopreneur trying to go through and educate as many people as I can on the benefits of circular logistics and reverse logistics to help product move from the hands of one customer to the next.
Great, very interesting. So actually, you trigger me, Rich, because you wrote a book Going Circular. What was the reason to do that?
So when I was on the advisory board of the Reverse Logistics Association, an industry that goes through, and it's a place very similar to this where like-minded people can get together. Our love language is return management. Most people don't know what reverse logistics is. I didn't know what it was until I was asked to lead a team. But the easiest way I can explain reverse logistics is by explaining forward logistics first. If you've ever bought anything online from a circular platform, eBay, Amazon, or on a internet platform matching supply and demand, if you order a book, forward logistics is you print it, you make it, you get it to a distribution point, you get it to an end customer. Reverse is, well, what happens when that person no longer wants it? Can it go back to the source? Can you get it to a different person that might want the used product? So reverse logistics is moving away from. And when I was going through on the advisory board of the Reverse Logistics Association, and I was working for Verizon and Cisco, there was no corporate training program that taught people what reverse logistics even was. If you're lucky, everyone that I know right now that is in reverse logistics got pulled into it. No one chose to go into reverse because no one knows what it is. And I found that I had to go through and do a large amount of recruiting and education just to get people to join my team. And once they found out the benefit that we had, it was inspiring. But on the advisory board of the Reverse Logistics Association, I found that my peers had the same challenge. No corporate training program, no formal education, a very complex industry. So when I was on the advisory board, I heard that the American Public University Systems, American Military University, American Public University, was offering a course that the Reverse Logistics Association helped build in 2013 to go through and provide education. So my thought was, as a board member, it would be responsible to take the course just to go through and see what it was like. I also wanted to go through and spend time in class with people that were trying to learn what reverse logistics was, because I wanted to recruit them. If they were interested in taking a college program and they were doing those steps, that's enough motivation to get me to be interested in bringing them on the team. And when I found myself halfway through the course, the book that they were using to teach was this one, Going Backwards, Reverse Logistics Trends and Best Practices. It was written in 1999. And it was a good book, but the premise behind the book was all returns were bad. In my world, you still want to drive down unwanted returns, but I grew the Verizon trading program to a $1.6 billion a year industry, matching used supply with used demand. And when I was going through and taking the course, I had one professor 7 classes in that started giving me C's on assignments because I was talking about driving returns up or driving some returns up. And he's like, well, that's not in the book. Like, but that's what I'm doing every day. We just won 3 Gartner supply chain awards by going through and maximizing value. I'm able to impact the stock price and turn cost centers into profit centers by finding value. And when he said, you can't write about anything unless it's in a book, you need to have your source. I'm like, well, I'll just write a book. And his response was, you can't write a book. And if you spend any time with me, that is enough motivation to get me to do that. So the Reverse Logistics Association wanted an updated book. They endorsed it. Auburn was my academic sponsor. I took 20 years of corporate work. I took the coursework with the recent research that I was able to do and tried to take something complex and put it into a logical order to talk about the reverse supply chain and try to create something that I wish would have been given to me when I went into reverse logistics for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there's interesting listening to Rich because I had a similar epiphany. I've been co-chairing the MIT Platform Strategy Summit, which is coming from the platform and marketplace perspective for a long time. And it kind of dawned on me that you have all of this talk about the circular economy, but when you look at the platform space, there's very little, almost nothing written. There are a lot of books written about the circular economy. There are a lot of books written about platforms and marketplaces and how powerful they are as business models, but these things haven't been brought together. So I've been, like Rich, working on kind of updating the theory or the practice to understand how platform business models can be applied to the circular economy. And so I've been working on a database for the past year and a half or so, and I'm up to 185 circular marketplaces globally. And these break into a couple categories. One are the generalist ones, like eBay. They'll sell lots of different types of products. Alibaba has one called Idlefish that's quite large. It does about $40 billion worth of GMV a year. And then you have verticals in a specific sector, like steel. You have scrap steel, secondary marketplaces, and things of that nature. And then you have niche. And these would be marketplaces specifically focused on a specific product, like phones. So phones are a great example. There are about 330 million phones now traded in secondary markets. And what's interesting and exciting is there's a lot of VC funding now going into the electronic space to build circular marketplaces. There was a startup in Chile that just got $4.5 million to expand from Chile into Mexico. So Latin America now is getting these marketplaces to exchange phones. So what's interesting is to marry Rich's deep understanding of circular logistics with the platforms, because the two work together. You know, once you grade that material, that dispositioning requires understanding, where do I resell that? The last thing you want to do is sell it to a liquidator, right? That's the lowest of the lowest. Those would be auctions. There's a lot more value that can be extracted if you put them on other types of marketplaces, or some brands are actually creating their own marketplace to resell their own products.
I'm raising my hand. I just need to tell you that I'm napping now. Just hearing you two go like that and with the accomplishments, I'm exhausted. So see you later.
So you should be energized.
I am. It's nice.
It's
It-
actually very
Crazy,
interesting.
yeah.
To your point,
It's
right?
crazy to hear.
A few years ago, we didn't think about all this stuff. We'd sell, ship, and that was the end of it. And there's so much value you can get from the returns, from extending the life of this shiny phone, right?
So one of the
Well-
things, yeah, that I've come to recognize is that because I worked in big companies like Rich did. I spent time at GE, and I also spent time at KPMG. And there's this mantra of customer centricity, customer centricity. You got to be customer focused. But actually, the lens that they present is actually pretty narrow. They're only thinking about customer number one. They're not thinking about customer 2 and 3 and 4. And I just
Exactly.
learned today, and I need to confirm this with Rich, is that a phone can often have 4 owners over its full lifetime. So that means that your definition and your frame of reference of thinking about customer centricity needs to change. It needs to be broader. And there's a lot of interesting dynamics when you start thinking about your product as multi-life and serving multiple customers. So it's not just the first customer, it can also be the second and third. And if you're starting to think about your second and third customer, suddenly you want to think about this product differently. How can I grade it? How can I design it so that it lasts? Lots of things that happen when you broaden your lens and think about customer centricity more broadly.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. I got into the circular economy, reverse and circular logistics when I was a marketing director. In 2009, I became the youngest director in Verizon. They created a position for me that had 2 remits. One was operations. I had 127 stores. I had over 400 franchise partners that were selling Verizon underneath their own entity. I had a couple hundred business-to-business representatives, and I had to get product into and out of stores. Part of my remit and my key point indicators or success metrics was driving down unwanted returns, because there was a cost associated with that, driving down the amount of technical swaps that we did where there was no fault found, because those were waste as well. So half of it was operations, compliance, risk management. The other part of my job was continuity marketing. $6 billion region, 10 million subscribers. I had to figure out how to get customers and keep customers. In the US back in 2010, there was still this model where you would give away free phones in exchange for a 2-year contract. And we had a retention weapon called New Every 2, where we gave customers $100 extra if they wanted to apply that towards a higher value phone. The iPhone changed that model because, number one, the phones were really expensive in comparison to the other candy bar style phones, Motorola, StarTAC, the other things that were around the Razor at that time. So they couldn't afford to give those away, and they couldn't afford to do the $100 discount. When I took a look at my market share, we had 62%. The competitive market was really aggressive. I was fearful that we would lose market share because we weren't giving value to people when they were renewing their contract. So I went to my regional president and I said, hey, boss, I think we're going to suffer more than the other regions because our market share is high. We've conditioned customers. I've conditioned customers. I've trained teams how to condition customers to expect this discount. If we don't give it to them or give them something, we're going to suffer. And like every good boss, He said, all right, Rich, you're probably right. And what I would love more than knowing what the problem is three solutions. So I found a company that, to Peter's point, knew that there was a second, third, and fourth market for devices. They just weren't involved in the transaction when a customer is more likely to trade in their phone. You're more likely to sell your house when you're buying a new house. You're more likely to sell your car when you're buying a new car. You're more likely to trade in your phone when you're buying a new phone. So I worked a deal where we had a catalog that our team was able to access, an electronic catalog. The beginning of a platform is saying, this is what I have. The platform said, this is what my partner was willing to pay for it. And if the value was $100 US, the customer was able to use that $100 to buy the next things and turn in their phone as a form of payment, which increased the amount that we were able to sell because the ones that did that had a higher attach rate. And number two, we made money when we sent the phone back to the right place. They paid us more than the $100. So it was a new revenue stream that increased sales. It increased customer service and satisfaction because customers felt like they were getting a good value. It was better for the environment. And funny enough, it even lowered our return rate because it's really hard to return your device if you don't have the old one to go back to. So in my world, there's four main things that a circular economy can do for a business in incremental revenue steps. You can charge people to re-register your device to use it. Some microsystems had a portal where you could go through and transfer equipment from me to Peter for a fee. iTunes has a platform, Apple with iTunes, where you go through and you identify who you are. And then once that happens and the product goes from the hands of one customer to the next, then it unlocks revenue that you can get through software and services. Apple makes 30 cents on the dollar for anything that you buy on your credit card, whether it's an iPhone 6 in Aruba or an iPhone 15 in downtown Amsterdam. There's used warranty and software or used warranty and customer support that you can get for the old device that you can charge for. And there's the incremental revenue that you can get by selling the product more than one time, the hardware. So when you add all those things up, to Peter's point, there is an entirely different business thought process that needs to happen with highly valuable, highly durable goods. The bar is getting lowered because circular platforms are matching used supply with used demand. Used clothing is growing 3 times faster than the sale of new clothing right now. So it's not just tech stuff. It's not computer stuff. These platforms that Peter is an expert on are really going through and lowering the cost to go through and move product from point to point. And it's matching used supply with used demand in a way that wasn't possible 20 years ago.
Yeah. And so we're seeing more brands kind of wake up to this. I actually just put a quiz out on LinkedIn recently, trying to see if people knew which brand had which re-commerce program. And I'll just throw out a couple of examples. Like Decathlon has a program called Buyback. Lululemon has a program called Like New. eBay has a program called Refurbished. North Face has a program called Renewed. So you can see these brands beginning to recognize that this is a thing. And when they put a name on it, that means that there's people behind it, there's activity behind it. And what I'm beginning to realize is there's companies are going to be having to establish 2 ecosystems. One is their forward logistics ecosystem, right? And that's going to involve kind of how they sell to that first customer and all the business processes and the services, the business services they use to do that. And then you're going to have your re-commerce ecosystem. And that actually involves a different set of parties. These are parties that can come in, different software, and potentially different physical assets like warehouses. And those could be owned by the brand or they can be managed by a third party. And so as you move into the circular economy, it actually involves thinking, differently, but also about how you construct those 2 ecosystems. And they can't be in isolation. They need to actually connect in important ways so that you get that consistency and that relationship between the first customer and the second customer, because that second customer may actually take, like, for example, if you give them a store credit, they become a first customer because they're going to go and buy something new. So you think dynamically about how these two ecosystems work together and how you create value. And the thing that I've learned recently is this is a great customer acquisition strategy, because some people aren't necessarily willing to buy, an iPhone 15 right away, or a brand new car that, for example, an EV, and so you might want to come into the market as a second use buyer. But then that gives you some, if you resold that, then you could get a credit to buy something new. So there's ways of figuring out how your first customer can become a second customer seller, and then that second customer eventually becomes a first customer. Anyway, it's very interesting to see how these things connect, and that, I think, is really the core of the future of the circular economy.
So where do you see technology coming to help all these platforms, scenarios? I mean, technology is evolving. We're the blockchain association, right? The blockchain
Sure.
association. We talk about traceability a whole lot in our world.
Exactly. So what's interesting is obviously the marketplaces have become mature. They're very efficient. They have standardized software. There are companies now that specializes in delivering marketplaces to customers. The consumer doesn't see that. That's all behind the scenes. But when they do the one, click out in the buy box that's all built with technology that makes buying very, very efficient. This is now moving into the circular economy. There are some things that are different, like grading. So systems that help companies grade and track that grading, so that they know the value of that product. And the other thing that's different is that when you're selling a new product, you'll have one SKU for this product, but when it becomes a second product, it's unique because how it was used would be different from any other product. So suddenly your supply chain kind of fragments into unique products, and that has to be managed, and software now is being developed to do that. So it's actually, we're kind of at a wave of innovation that's taking place in this space, which I think reduce the transaction costs associated with making circular transactions happen. They were really hard 10 years ago, but as these technologies come in and the data that's associated with aggregating this information, you can make a lot better decisions. And so this is, the value proposition that Rich was speaking to. If you don't have the data, it's hard to know what the value is. So the more data that you can collect. So there's specialized software now that is being deployed in these spaces. And the digital product passports are very interesting as well, because it creates continuity between those two ecosystems I was managing and discussing. And in fact, some of the digital passport companies are offering brands the opportunity to resale on different platforms that's embedded in the digital product passport. So a lot of people think the digital product passport is just a repository for data. It actually can be a repository for a bunch of services as well that benefit both the brand that issues the digital product passport and the consumer. And what's also interesting is if I know I can resell an item, I actually might buy a more expensive item. So it actually can have interesting dynamics in terms of customer buying behavior and their willingness to spend on a more durable product or a more expensive product, because they have that resale option available to them in a more efficient and effective way, almost seamlessly now, in a way that didn't exist even like a couple of years ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I've got to agree with Peter. The only reason why Apple can sell a iPhone for $1,500 US is because the majority of the population has an old one that's still worth $700 or $800 that can be applied to it. Every year, there's a new product that comes through, and two things happen: it'll have a few more bells and whistles, a better camera, or whatnot, and a higher price tag. And Apple realized this. There was a press release that was done in January of 2019. It was 3 days after I retired from Verizon, where Tim Cook, the CEO, said that his plan to right size the revenue miss that they had was to make it easy for customers to trade in their device, because the old product acts as a subsidy towards the customer's next new model, is better for the environment, and it grows their install base of subscribers. So anytime a phone goes from the hands of one customer to the next in a different part of the world, and they register, Apple starts making money off of that device. It's an ATM machine. And to Peter's point, if you track and trace the data, you can start to see where customers are going through and buying your used equipment. And if that market gets big enough for you to go through and say, well, now it's worth my time to invest our resources to go and sell there, you're being much more scientific with data on how you go through and grow your acquisition strategy. And you start shaping what customer 2 and 3 and 4 look like. The other part with blockchain that I love that Peter hit on is that digital passport. Because in reverse logistics, the goal is to find out what is the product, because sometimes what you get back is not what you're supposed to get back. Then what does it look like? How does it function? And where does it need to go to set it back up to go into a forward supply chain moving to the next point? And with a digital passport, not only can you track what the composition was to go through and make the device, but you can use that information, a QR code, blockchain information, to keep track of the device over its life cycle. So a device is going to go, or a piece of clothing is going to go from one person to the next through a marketplace. A digital passport will allow you to go through, take a moment in time to say, what was the technology health of a device? Did it pass a test? Did it clear data? What was the battery state of health? How many charging cycles and capacity? And if the charging capacity is 80% now, and in 5 months it's resold and it's at 100, well, then you know that something happened to that device. The other thing that people innately believe is the more cosmetic wear is on a product, the lower you should pay for it. One of the challenges with these circular platforms, that the ones that Peter mentioned, they all have different grading standards of what they call the condition of a product. Good, better, best, great, very good, good, like new, pristine, excellent. There's no standardization, and the standardization and acceptance levels vary based upon different parts of the world. Japanese has a very high standard. Japan has a very high standard compared to South America, where a B in South America would be a C in Japan. So with the digital passports, if you capture an image, then you give the power to the person that's making the purchase to say, all right, I know what this thing looks like. I can accept it. And if you blockchain and keep that information over the life cycle, well, now we're looking at product data in a way that no one's ever been able to do before.
Yep.
So, Rich, you have been explaining about the world's circular logistics. It's still a completely new world for me. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah, you bet. It's been really hard to explain to my friends and family members what I do when I say I work in reverse logistics. So I started going through, and when I was researching the book, trying to learn about the circular economy. And there was a lot of definitions of what the circular economy was. There's over 100, but a lack of how to go through and do it. My definition of a circular economy is movement of a product from one user to the next. And you can measure the success of your circular economy by measuring how often a product goes through forward logistics to the first owner, back through reverse logistics away from the customer to another forward logistics operation to move it towards the next point of use. And that movement of product from to is accomplished through circular logistics, which is a combination of forward and reverse.
Clear. And during your introduction, you also used the word as your new position. You're an info, and I cannot even pronounce it. But I think Peter, exactly. So, but I actually think Peter is also one of them. Could you explain a little bit more about it? What you actually are currently doing?
Yeah,
Oh, you know,
I'm playing off of the word entrepreneur. Intrapreneur is working within companies. I'm an infopreneur now in this season of my life,
Infopreneur.
where
yeah.
I'm concerned that reverse logistics and circular logistics is so complicated. There is no education on it. I was doing a keynote speech for the Reverse Logistics Association. 900 of my friends, when I launched the book, and I asked them to raise their hand if they've ever taken a course on business, logistics, supply chain, and hands went up all over the room. I said, cool, keep them up. You guys are the professionals, the best of the best. If you've ever taken one college course, just one on reverse logistics, and every hand went down except for one, but I recognized the guy and I said, put your hand down if you're not teaching a course on reverse logistics. And his hand went down because he was one of my professors. So it really highlighted the fact that this industry and the way customers are evolving how they shop, moving towards used, the way that online shopping has disrupted supply chains because online returns are 2x the rate of retail returns because you can't see, touch, or feel things. There's a lack of understanding in this space. So when I found one college, and there's only been one college that I found that offers a course, there's only one other college I found that even offered a class on reverse. I've made it a mission to try to go through and get 15 different colleges to adopt a reverse logistics course. I wrote the book to be a textbook, a teaching tool, and they don't have to use my book, but there needs to be something out there to educate the next generation of leaders that have a passion and desire about taking sustainable action, how to do it.
And my view is that this needs to become part of a company's grand strategy, right? You need to understand not only how you supply that first customer, but increasingly, for a bunch of reasons, both societal, regulatory, et cetera, economics. We're moving into an era in which materials are going to become scarcer, right? There's growing attention to the amount of demand there's going to be for base materials like copper, right, into the future, especially as we
critical
transition.
minerals, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then critical materials like lithium and things of that nature. So, there's a bunch of things happening in the world. One of them is the great energy transition that we're happening from fossil to cleaner energy. Those cleaner energies need a lot of metals to actually operate. So, reverse logistics isn't just about sustainability and carbon. It's also about how companies are going to get access to critical materials and at what cost. And so this will become an increasingly important part of how companies. I was just talking about how this is going to be an increasingly important part of how companies think about their grand strategy. Circular isn't just a nice to have, it's going to be critical to their overall strategic position, and it's going to distinguish frontier companies from followers.
Yep.
For sure. And like you mentioned, the world is having the same demand continuously. Not everything is available. So you also have to reuse it from the products which are already out there. So the circular loop becomes more and more important. And therefore, the circular logistics principle, which Rich described, and we described as from owner to owner, becomes more and more important.
I just saw a ranking of countries, and the Netherlands came out as, I believe, the most circular economy that exists right now.
That's a surprise.
Yeah, and I also just saw there's a fund that was just raised for $30 million to invest in circular startups in the Netherlands. So there's a lot going on in the Netherlands, actually.
True.
There was something in our news that the Netherlands were one of the most solar advanced countries in the world.
Yeah, exactly. Great.
So any famous last words? Where can folks reach you?
Well, we wanted to talk a bit. Maybe Rich will come on in a second here.
He comes.
Yeah. Hello, Rich.
Hello. I thought it automatically shut off, so I was waiting on a new one to come
It
through. I
did.
apologize.
It
It
did.
did, it
But
did.
we have an opportunity to give our last remarks, and I thought we
Okay,
would just focus on our course, right?
do it. Yep.
Rich and I have joined forces to bring together our different areas of expertise, but to show how they link together on reverse logistics and platform strategy. They work in tandem. Most of the discussions treat these as isolated or not even connected, but the reality is if you're going to be successful, you have to connect these two. So we've put together a masterclass and had an opportunity to teach that in Barcelona recently, and are looking forward to other opportunities to share this and become evangelists or infopreneurs, I guess is we'll call
Entrepreneurs.
it.
It's sinking in. Infopreneurs. I can say it
There
now.
you go. You all are infopreneurs as well by going through and doing this. So
Yeah.
when Peter and I first got connected, when I wrote the book, he made a comment that hey, I haven't thought about this. I'd love to read it. So we reached out and we became friends, and there was an immediate click to go through and connect the platforms and the circular platforms that match use supply with use demand with the reverse logistics that help identify what it is and how you need to go through and present your supply, and then help go through, facilitate the movement to assess cosmetic and functional to match it to the demand. Every platform has a value, what you can get, a velocity, how many you can sell, and the understanding of the interconnectivity is very important with business. There's a different procurement methodology for customer two than customer one because you're not making things, you're not buying commodities. You've got to understand, use price, the supply and demand of it in the market. In my world, there's never a bad product, only a bad price. And money is made on the buy. Can you buy low and sell high? And these platforms help go through and understand how you go through and make it happen. So our masterclass is an 8-hour seminar. We've got 3-day options as well. If there's a company that wants to go deep and map out their own internal strategies, we can help with that. But the 8-hour masterclass that Peter and I taught in Barcelona, we're doing another one in Hong Kong, goes through and helps articulate what is reverse logistics, the transition from a linear to a circular economy. We do 2 different great interactive exercises, one where we go through and we grade product, another one where we go through and analyze business cases of how you should go through and staff and fund and move product. But it's a pretty in-depth education meant for executives or people that are trying to go through and define the strategy to learn at a leader level what circular platforms and circular logistics can do to improve the environment and a company's bottom line at the same time.
I think I already have somebody in mind. We'll try to get you up to Canada in what, February?
Well, that sounds like a lovely time to go to Canada.
I'll book my igloo now.